There is a cosmic field of information that holds every thought, every experience, and every potential of all the souls that have ever existed. It's a vast field of consciousness that can be accessed. It's the greatest library in the universe, and you were born with the access code. You just don't remember where you wrote it down. Einstein once said that the past, present, and future are only illusions, albeit persistent ones. He was more right than he realized. For millennia, ancient civilizations across the planet documented this energetic field that transcends time and space. The Akashic records are mentioned in sacred texts from dozens of cultures, from ancient Egypt to Vedic India, always described with reverence as the primordial source of all wisdom. And the most astonishing part, modern science is beginning to confirm what mystics have always known. My name is Noah, and this is the Hermes Code channel. In 1883, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, born in Ukraine and a tireless traveler, published a groundbreaking work called The Secret Doctrine. In it, Blavatsky described in detail a concept that would forever change the Western understanding of the nature of reality: the Akashic records. But she wasn't inventing something new. She was simply reintroducing an ancient truth that had been carefully preserved by spiritual initiates for centuries. The story of the Akashic records, however, begins much earlier, in ancient India. The word Akasha comes from Sanskrit and means ether or space. We're not talking about physical space as we know it, but rather the primordial substrate from which all reality emerges. For Indian sages, Akasha was the first of the 5 fundamental elements, the energetic matrix that permeates and sustains the entire universe. While Blavatsky was introducing this concept to the West, on the other side of the world, in India, masters like Paramahansa Yogananda were already teaching that these records could be accessed by anyone who developed the right level of spiritual perception. For them, it wasn't a matter of belief, it was a matter of direct experience. The famous mystic Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, brought a new dimension to the understanding of the Akashic records in the early 20th century. During his trance sessions, Cayce claimed to access a vast repository of information about his patients, including details of past lives that explained their current health conditions. Between 1901 and 1944, Cayce conducted over 14,000 documented readings, many of which explicitly referenced the Akasha as his source of information. But the understanding of the Akashic records wasn't limited to the Western esoteric tradition. In Tibet, Buddhist monks practiced precise meditation techniques to access what they called the Library of Time. In Hebrew traditions, there was the Book of Life, where every human action was believed to be recorded. In Islam, there is the concept of al-Law al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet, where all the knowledge of the universe is inscribed. In Gnostic teachings, the Akasha is referred to as the Book of Remembrance. In 1964, a young scientist named Carl Pribram developed a revolutionary theory about how the brain processes and stores information. At the same time, physicist David Bohm proposed that the universe functions as a vast hologram. Without knowing it, they were laying a scientific foundation for what mystics had always described as the Akashic records, a holographic field of information where each part contains the whole. The most fascinating story, however, comes from the shamans of the Amazon rainforest. For millennia, these cultures have used sacred plants like ayahuasca to access what they call the forest library, a realm where all information about medicinal plants, ancestral stories, and healing is available to those who know how to properly tune their consciousness. The truth is, throughout human history, various cultures, separated by vast oceans and impassable mountains, with no contact between them, have described the same phenomenon, a universal field of consciousness where all knowledge is preserved and accessible. Even though the names differ and the metaphors used to describe this field of information vary, the essence remains the same, proving the universality of this human perception. And now, in the 21st century, as quantum physics unravels the mysteries of non-locality and quantum entanglement, we are rediscovering, through science, what the ancients always knew. Information is the fundamental fabric of the universe, and consciousness is its highest expression. Remember our previous videos where we explained that the all is everything and that the universe is mental? Well, now we're taking another step deeper into the principle of mentalism. But what really are the Akashic records, beyond the metaphors and poetic descriptions? To truly understand their nature, we first need to realize that they're not somewhere out there. They are an aspect of universal consciousness itself. Think of the universe as a vast ocean of consciousness. Every thought, every emotion, every experience creates a ripple in that ocean, and those ripples never truly disappear. They're imprinted into the very fabric of reality. The Akashic records are these energetic impressions, preserved not in a physical location, but in the quantum matrix that underlies our reality. Physicist Max Planck, the father of quantum theory, once said, "All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter." Planck was essentially describing what the ancients called the Akasha, the fundamental field of consciousness that precedes matter. One key aspect of the Akashic records that few understand is their non-linear nature. Unlike a book that's read page by page, the Akasha exists beyond the limits of linear time. Past, present, and future coexist simultaneously within this field. That's why those who access the records often report experiences of potential futures or alternate timelines, not as fixed predictions, but as quantum probabilities. By now, you're probably realizing that understanding this fundamentally changes our relationship with the concepts of destiny and free will. The records are not a predetermined script of our future, but rather a dynamic map of possibilities that respond to our choices and intentions. As quantum physics explains, conscious observation affects the outcome of an experiment. In the same way, our awareness is constantly interacting with the Akashic field, co-creating our reality moment by moment. Another rarely discussed aspect is the relationship between the Akashic records and human DNA. Scientists like Russian researcher Peter Garyaev discovered that DNA functions as a transmitter and receiver of biomagnetic information. Our genetic material doesn't just carry biological data. It also appears to interact with subtler informational fields. This could explain why some people have spontaneous access to ancestral memories or knowledge they never formally learned. The ancient Egyptians understood this when they spoke of the Library of Alexandria of the Soul, a repository of all wisdom accessible through what they called the Eye of Horus, the third eye that perceives beyond the limits of the physical senses. For them, accessing this field of information wasn't a supernatural ability, but a natural capacity we all possess when our pineal gland, the gland associated with the third eye, is functioning at its full potential. What makes the Akashic records so revolutionary is that they challenge the materialist notion that consciousness is merely a byproduct of the brain. On the contrary, they suggest that consciousness is the fundamental substrate of reality, and that our brains function more like receivers tuning into specific frequencies of this vast informational field, rather than generators of consciousness. So how can we consciously access this vast field of information? Contrary to popular belief, you don't need to be a medium or have extraordinary psychic abilities. Accessing the Akashic records is a birthright of every human being, and there are specific methods that have been refined over millennia to help facilitate this connection. The first and most essential principle is mental stillness. In a world saturated with external stimuli and constant distractions, our minds rarely reach the receptive state needed to tune into more subtle frequencies. Regular meditation creates what neuroscientists call neural coherence, a state in which brain waves synchronize, allowing consciousness to expand beyond its usual limitations. Linda Howe, one of the leading contemporary authorities on Akashic records, developed a method based on a sacred sequence of sounds or prayer path that acts as a key frequency, tuning individual consciousness to this field of information. This structured method emphasizes the importance of clear intention and deep reverence when approaching the records. A lesser-known but equally powerful technique comes from the Bon tradition of pre-Buddhist Tibet. These practitioners use what they call the empty light breath, where the inhalation is visualized as pure light filling the body, and the exhalation as the dissolution of all mental barriers. After 108 breaths in this specific pattern, many report a spontaneous expansion of consciousness that facilitates access to the records. Hypnagogic states, that liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, also represent natural portals to the Akasha. Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors in history, deliberately used this state to access information beyond his conscious knowledge. He would sit in a chair holding metal balls in his hands, placed over metal basins. As he lightly fell asleep, the balls would fall, creating a sound that would wake him up, allowing him to capture the information obtained in this expanded state. Interestingly, human DNA seems to play a crucial role in this access process. Recent research in epigenetics shows that our genetic material responds not only to biochemical influences but also to thought patterns and emotional states. When we enter states of heart coherence, measured by heart rate variability, our DNA seems to become a more efficient receptor for information from the quantum field. The European Rosicrucian tradition taught that each human being possesses a light body that serves as an interface between individual consciousness and the universal Akashic record. Through specific visualizations that activate this subtle body, initiates learn to consciously navigate the Akashic ocean of information. This practice involved visualizing sacred geometric symbols that acted as vibrational keys to different levels of the records. What all these traditions have in common is the recognition that access to this universal library is not about acquiring external information, but about removing the veils that obscure the wisdom already present in all of us. As the philosopher Plotinus said in the 3rd century, knowledge is not something that comes from outside to within, but an awakening of what is already inside. The benefits of raising consciousness to the vibrational levels of this field of possibilities go far beyond mere satisfaction of curiosity or obtaining hidden information. When we establish a conscious connection with this field of universal wisdom, profound transformations occur at multiple levels of our being. First, the records offer an expanded perspective on our life patterns. Many people discover that recurring challenges in their current lives have roots in past life experiences or soul agreements made before incarnation. A study conducted by the University of Virginia documented more than 2,500 cases of children who reported detailed memories of past lives, many of them later verified. This universal library provides a broader context for these memories, revealing the evolutionary purpose behind seemingly random experiences. Emotional healing is another profound benefit. When we access the higher perspective of the records, traumatic events that we have carried for years, sometimes for multiple lifetimes, can be recontextualized and released. In the Egyptian esoteric tradition, it was said that when an initiate accessed the great field of possibilities for the first time, they underwent an experience called the weighing of the heart. This symbolic ritual represented the moment when all illusions fell to the ground, and the person confronted the absolute truth about themselves. There was no external judgment in this process, only the crystalline clarity of self-perception. Many who access the records today report a similar experience of encountering a filterless truth, but permeated by an unconditional love that makes it possible to accept even the darkest aspects of oneself. Perhaps the deepest benefit is the dissolution of the illusion of separation that pervades our modern culture. By diving into the Akashic field, we directly experience that all consciousnesses are interconnected in a vast fabric of unified intelligence. This perception is not just an intellectual concept, but a visceral experience that fundamentally transforms how we relate to other beings and to the planet as a whole. Everything I have shared with you today cannot remain just theoretical knowledge, because I don't consider it just a reminder to recall your own connection to this universal wisdom that already exists within you. The next time you meditate, before falling asleep, or even during a moment of deep contemplation, allow yourself to ask this simple question. What does my soul need to know the most right now? Can I tell you one more thing? If some part of you recognized all of this as a truth that has always been there, but you could only name it now, then here's what you should do. Tell me here in the comments. And if you want to dive even deeper into the subject, just subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because I'll continue bringing content that's not only informative, but transformative. And if you're part of that 1% who are truly interested in evolving for real, don't miss our upcoming videos. The ancient wisdom is awakening in our modern times, and you are part of this awakening. Thank you for staying with me until now. I'll see you in our next meeting.